KFI AM 640. It's later with Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. And I tell you, rainy days and Mondays always get me down. Well, it's not raining, but it is Monday. And I had a real busy weekend. I mean, it was really busy. You ever have that feeling when you come back to work on a Monday that you didn't have a weekend? And it's like, oh, shoot, I got to go another 5 days. But it's good. It's good. What was bad was this movie I saw over the weekend when I did have some free time, and I have watcher's remorse. We all have limited amount of time that we have to spend, doing what we want to do. And I decided to put on this movie called Electric Slate on Netflix. And it was really publicized and promoted. And if you're familiar with the Russo brothers, they're big deals, real big deals in the industry. They directed The Avengers, and Mark Ronner made allusions to this last week.
I tried to warn you, but you don't listen to me like you should.
I'm thinking that I could just go ahead and pop it in, and if you start with low expectations, you'll finish with a degree of enjoyment because you started with low expectations. No expectations, no disappointments. That's generally how I live my life. I should have turned off the TV the moment the opening credits started rolling. That, and I didn't finish it. I only got like 45, 50 minutes in. That was probably one of the worst pieces of defecation I've seen since maybe Battlefield Earth.
What did I tell you? What was it, Friday when I came staggering in here? Something like it's probably the stinker of the year. Yeah,
but I don't believe you about much of anything, so there's no reason to take your word for it.
Well, I think we've learned a lesson from this, haven't we?
Well, you put black olives on your pizza, so you're questionable to begin with.
I'm not going to let you drag me into that black olive morass again today, but this movie, we finally agree on this.
We agree on this, and it was so bad. I was watching it last night. I couldn't finish it. And you ever go to bed angry because you watched something which wasted the last remnants of your weekend? And I felt that someone took money out of my pocket. I was so angry.
Oh, I've been angry ever since Thursday night when I saw the first hour of it. It's like, you think I'm that stupid that you would give this thing to me to watch? How dare you, Russo brothers? How dare you, Netflix? How dare every single person involved in this? You belong in front of a tribunal at The Hague. This wasn't just a movie. This was a grievous personal insult.
The Hague?
You should be pissed about this.
The Hague, not Gitmo?
Put him on a plane to Venezuela. I guess that's the thing of the week.
Ooh, that's topical reference.
You like that?
I see what you did there. But, with our luck, the plane will probably turn around and come back, as opposed to.
Not if a judge orders it to. We got to be on top of the trends here.
We got a lot of topical references in there. Yeah, that was my weekend and doing some other things. But, it's good to be back with all of you. Oh, and Rolling Loud this weekend was not as loud as it was in previous years. Maybe they got the message. Maybe they understood that there was some sort of noise ordinance where you can't have 455 decibels all weekend long. So I did not hear it from my house, but those who lived in Inglewood proper, they were still complaining. So evidently it was pretty loud. We're going to hear from Mayor Karen Bass. She gave out the crime stats today and says that they are down. Now, I'm quite sure there's skepticism all around. We tend not to believe our government, but I'm going to see if I can have a different conversation about our perception of crime. I'm going to do it 2 times. I'm going to do it at the bottom of the hour and also at the end of the show with my final thought. There's a lot I got to say about crime, how we deal with it and how we should look at it. So we'll definitely talk about that. And there's going to be a Starship Troopers remake? Really? I was not a fan of the first one. I just thought it was too campy, too unserious.
Oh,
and
no.
I don't think it was true to the source material, and I think Mark Ronner backs me up on that, at least as far as tone.
Do you understand that it was satire?
I do understand it was satire and the larger point it was trying to make, but that movie, the way it was presented, I don't think it was trying to make that larger point about war.
It was satire, just like RoboCop, and I think the world is starting to catch up to Paul Verhoeven's sense of satire. There were a lot of people took it at face value at the time, and now they're like, oh, He was mocking Americans. How dare he?
Well, now that not only are we catching up to him as a director, America is catching up to his vision of Detroit and RoboCop. So we see like, oh, that's what he was talking about.
Same thing with Starship Troopers. He was making the same critiques of...
You mean bugs are going to start lobbing rocks at us?
It has nothing to do with the bugs. It had nothing to do with
I want to know
bugs.
more. See what I did there?
I see what you did.
So all that and more tonight as we kick off the week. We're going to have some fun. We're going to learn some things from each other. We're going to talk about crime, hopefully have a higher caliber of conversation regarding crime. Not just the same platitudes that we hear from politicians, not just the same complaints that we hear from the populace like you and someone else who have to say everything about crime. It's dangerous out there. LA is just a crime-ridden city. But there's something in between, something that's been missed. And we're going to hit it tonight.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Thank goodness I was not caught up in that snarl of a traffic jam yesterday in and around all of Los Angeles, thanks to the Los Angeles Marathon, the 40th annual. Had a number of friends running in it, and I wished them good luck. There was no way in the world I was going to participate. I know my limitations. I have no desire to run more than 60 feet at a time. That's it. I like to stay within my boundaries. I know exactly what I can and cannot do, and I've never had any desire to run long distances. Did a little track back in middle school and high school. Did not want to do long distances. It was not my thing. I'll never understand the motivation to run 26.2 miles, but I will never dismiss it. I think it's a tremendous accomplishment. In fact, I did not even know, and maybe you did, but I did not know that an American had not won the LA Marathon in over 30 years. Matt Rickman won the marathon yesterday with a time of 2 hours, 7 minutes, and 56 seconds, and it was 3 minutes ahead of the second place finisher. And Rickman's victory, means he is the first American to win the race since 1994. And from what I see here, the 2 hours, 7 minutes, and 56 seconds beat Mark Ronner's marathon time by 3 hours, 8 minutes, and 45 seconds.
Oh, I was slow, and I'll never do it again either.
Did you walk much of it, or did you at least jog?
I reached a point, I think after like mile 12, mile 15, something like that, where I would start each mile with a little bit of a walk because it killed. And I got to remind you, I didn't train for it. I did it as a prank.
On yourself, clearly.
Sorry, you went out there for a second.
And so you did it as a prank on yourself.
No, I did it as a prank because I fancied myself some sort of low-level George Plimpton who would just go and do things and then write about them, write funny columns that, for some reason, my discomfort and humiliation were popular with readers. Go figure.
There's certain things I'm just not going to do. Could I do it if I trained? Probably not. My hips wouldn't allow it. I don't know if I could even get up to that point. I don't have any delusions of grandeur about where I am in life now. Other people, they can, and they do a marathon at 60 years old. Their first one at 60 years old or older. I won't be that person.
Well, there's no reason to do it. You have nothing to prove. Neither do I. I think the people who do marathons need mental help. They need
oh wow.
They need to talk to a professional who can get them through the reasons why they feel compelled to do this horrific thing to themselves.
Sam is our resident psychologist or psychiatrist. How would you?
Psychologist.
Okay.
I can't prescribe medication.
Okay, you're a resident psychologist. Have you successfully defended your dissertation yet?
Not yet. No, I'm still writing it, still putting it together.
How many pages?
At some point, I will be a doctor.
Okay, how many pages is it going to be roughly?
I'm guessing it's going to be upwards of about 80 to 90 pages.
That's not bad. I was thinking like it'd be like 150, 200. So
yeah. Well, it depends on how deeply I want to interpret the data. But as far as people running the marathon goes, I'd ask them, what are you running from?
There you go. That's exactly right.
Because a lot of people will go and have a lot of personal problems and not want to deal with those personal personal problems, and they'll spend all of their time training, or they'll spend their time working, burying themselves at work. You see a lot of
disassociative behavior.
Yeah, well, not necessarily dissociating, but trying to be able to distract themselves from whatever they're either running away from emotionally or afraid of. Depends on it depends on the individual person, obviously. But yeah, I'd ask, what are you running from?
Is it your contention, doctor, that people who find enjoyment in marathons or distance running, which includes all the training, that there may be some or a likely underlying unresolved issue which is indicative of some sort of mental illness?
I wouldn't say that about everybody. Some people are doing it maybe as, like they got into it as a way to improve something about themselves. But there's a lot of people who all they do is fixate on it, and you can see that there's something missing with them because they're focusing just on the training and only on that, and they're letting other avenues of their life completely go by the wayside.
All right, let me flip this and argue it from the other side. What about the person who's saying, look, I'm in the best health of my life, or at least they think so. I'm doing something which is not hurting anyone. I'm doing something which is productive. You can argue on some level. What's wrong with that?
Nothing. If it doesn't bother a person, the thing is, it's the thing that makes something diagnosable clinically is if it causes a person distress. If it doesn't cause that individual distress, it's fine. It's not harming anybody else. It's not doing anything to harm a single person around them. It makes that person feel more emboldened. It gives them a stronger sense of self. There's nothing wrong with it at all. If they realize that during the training, they can't stop running, they can't stop training, then they may start feeling a little bit distressed about the whole process.
Oh, so if anything crosses the line into obsessive compulsive behavior, then maybe?
Oh, it has to cause distress. If it doesn't cause them distress, I can't make a diagnosis.
If I run a mile, it would cause me distress. So isn't that the same thing?
Is it physical or emotional distress?
Trust me. If I'm running a mile right now, I'm in physical pain and probably hating my life. So if I were to run a mile, there's something wrong with me then emotionally?
No, a mile is fine if it's something that's met, if it's for a purpose. If you're running for no reason, if you're running because you're pretending that you're being chased by somebody, or you actually think you're being chased by someone, there can be some psychological issues that go into that. But really, there's nothing wrong with people who want to just stay physically fit. It's just, are you intentionally focusing more on your fitness because you're trying to avoid some psychological mental health crisis, something that deeply troubling you, but you're doing everything you can to distract from it? People bury themselves in their work specifically to avoid dealing with their own mental health issues.
Okay, get out of my life. All right. Now you're hitting too close to home. I've been burying myself in my work. I'm working all the time, doing stuff from home, doing stuff from the studio, trying to book guests and everything. So heart to heart, just tell me what's wrong with me, Sam, Dr. Sam.
You take a lot of pride in what you do, and being successful makes you feel good. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think anything you're doing right now causes you distress. I think the rest of the world around you might be distressing you.
I was going to say, now, maybe you should talk to my wife because her view of me is in stark contrast with what you had to say.
I'm willing to bet that she has a much more intimate view of you.
What are you trying to say?
I mean, I've known you for a few years, but not that deeply.
Yeah,
so she gets to see, I guess more of how the sausage is made at home, I guess.
I'm going to
so
leave
to
that
speak,
alone.
Yes. Let me put things into perspective for you. The one time I did a marathon, it was the Chicago Marathon. There was free beer at the end of the race after the finish line. I was so destroyed that I could not drink any of the free beer.
You'd be dehydrated, wouldn't you?
I thought in that moment, what have I done? The world is upside down. This is topsy-turvy. This makes no sense to me. And that's one reason why I'll never do it. How could you refuse free beer if you are in your right mind?
I don't drink beer, except for Dodger games. I don't drink beer. So
how could a normal person refuse free beer?
Oh,
You got to be able to catch your breath to be able to breathe. I mean, if you're out of breath, then you can barely stand up. Then I can understand passing up a beer and waiting until someone at least puts you in a wheelchair first.
It's just a completely unnatural David Blaine thing to do to yourself, okay?
All I know of is if the whole process, the activity might have me lose control of my bowels.
There's always that risk, by the way.
Okay. It's probably not for me. Okay. I don't need to run 26 miles instead of a laxative. Okay. I could just do some Docalax and just leave it at that. I don't need to put my body through that type of hell.
Yeah, because as you age, you have less and less control over pretty much everything. And who wants to roll those dice in the middle of a crowded race?
No. And you got to put something in your stomach, I assume. You can't run a marathon on an empty stomach, can you?
Oh, no, you need fuel.
And we've all seen the pictures of people who've had those moments during marathons. And you can't, you feel bad for them.
You're not going on
really.
a Wheaties box after that.
Not really. You knew what you were getting into, okay? The person who loses their bowels now has seen the pictures of other people losing their bowels. You're not going in like, what? I didn't know that could happen. What is happening to me? Why is it this dribbling stuff is happening behind me? No, you can't claim ignorance. You know. You signed up for that. In fact, you paid money for the privilege of losing your bowels in front of thousands of people.
I wonder, though, you talked a few weeks back about special diapers for all-day concerts. There's got to be Depends for marathons now, right?
It seems like it would chafe.
Well, okay, I'm not going to. Never mind.
I think
we should move
people
on.
Need to start really making like more ergonomic diapers for the marathon
you
runner.
think about what they're wearing. The diapers probably, not only are they not aerodynamic, it just seemed like it'd be a bit cumbersome. Can you run with a load?
I gotta get to the news.
So it's not a no.
It is a no. I did not, but actually, okay, I'll admit this, and then we have to go. And this is all I'm willing to say. I didn't pack really well before I did the marathon, and I ran the whole Chicago Marathon with no underwear.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
I want to spend some time tonight, some real time, talking about crime, our concept of it, our perception of it, what we think of it with respect to politicians and elected officials. We live in an age where we generally, I'll say generally, if you're not one of these people, then fine, disregard it. But we generally distrust our elected officials. May it be on political lines, may it be on conspiratorial lines. We generally distrust our elected officials. Meaning, if our preferred candidate / party is not in power, we definitely distrust numbers which come out. And if it's our preferred candidate, then we're a little bit more accepting. With that in mind, I know that if you are not a Democrat, if you don't support Karen Bass, then you're probably going to disregard any type of positive numbers that she may have to report regarding crime. Unfortunately, that's where we are as a nation. And I don't want people to just sort of hone in on the numbers. This is a little bit more general. Earlier this morning, Mayor Bass had a press conference talking about, and I'll tell you in advance, the improved crime numbers in the city of Los Angeles. Right now, she's going to have her say, and then afterward, I will have a say, and I'll also close the show tonight with my final thought on crime as the final say. Here is Mayor Bass.
My job as your mayor is to keep the city safe. And we are here today to talk about the 2024 crime data, which reports that both homicides and violent crime are down in Los Angeles. Now, we certainly understand that if you have been a victim of crime or know someone who has been a victim of crime, these statistics do not necessarily represent your experience.
I'll agree with her there. If you've been a victim of crime or know someone who's been a victim of crime, your perception of the crime statistics is going to be different. But here's the problem with that, or I should say the reality of that. I'm guessing just about everybody knows someone who was a victim of crime in the past couple of years, be it a catalytic converter stolen, be it some sort of theft, burglary, robbery, looting. We know somebody, right? So our view is going to be somewhat skewed. So I will agree with her on that.
Any crime is unacceptable to us, and we know that everyone standing here today knows that we must continue to approach this issue with urgency and precision. Over the last 2 years, we've made key improvements in a comprehensive approach to public safety. Our recruitment of people who want to be officers are up. We have attracted record numbers of applicants to join the department. However, we are still struggling with the hiring process.
Is crime a function of having more police officers or not? Now, I've talked about Metro and how it needs to have its own dedicated law enforcement arm who can actually patrol the trains. But I'm saying and platforms and what have you. But more generally, is it just having more police, more law enforcement presence, or is it something else?
We've decreased street encampments by 10%. And what that means is that that's a decrease in police calls. It's also a decrease in crime that can be associated with encampments. We've launched effective task forces like the Organized Retail Task Force, which has led to hundreds of arrests and millions of dollars in stolen goods recovered. Smash and grabs have declined. The Heavy Metal Task Force has made more than 100 arrests and recovered thousands of pounds of copper wire. If you wonder why your streetlights are out, many chances it's because of copper wire theft.
That is true. A lot of the streetlights in my neighborhood are out because of copper wire theft, and a lot of the fire hydrants have been vandalized as well, rendering them inoperable on certain occasions. And obviously, against the backdrop of the fires, that is a cause for concern. But the question is, as far as crime, if I walk outside today, do I walk outside thinking that, well, crime is down, whatever number, let's say murders are down 10%. Do you feel 10% safer? Does that thought actually go through your mind? Do you feel as if because the stats say one thing that you will also feel a certain way? Or is crime about what happened in the past and not a predictor of the future? I think it's that. And just because we had fewer murders in 2024 doesn't mean that we're on a trajectory where we'll have fewer murders in 2025. I don't walk outside and say, hey, Sam, I feel 10% safer today because crime is down 10%. That thought has never crossed my mind. My head is always on a swivel. I'm always concerned about my surroundings and people who might be surrounding me. I'm always careful about where I drive and who might be able to see me, whether I'm making myself more vulnerable. That has nothing to do with crime stats. And I don't look to the mayor per se as the person who's going to make me feel safer. Am I wrong in that regard?
No, not at all. I feel like the mayor shouldn't necessarily be the one to give you that feeling. Although when you get those numbers, it's nice knowing that individual people, though, however, are going to have their own feelings of safety based off of what location they're at what time.
And there's something else here. It is part of the civics lesson. Mayor Bass is talking about murders within the parameters and boundaries of LA City. And we know crime doesn't have any respect for boundaries. Here's what I mean. I live in the city of Los Angeles, unincorporated, but still is the city of Los Angeles. I can listen to these crime stats, and I can also tell you, as I border Inglewood, that I don't feel any differently, especially when I know about the murder of Juan Sanchez, who was trying to, as a good Samaritan, stop the catalytic converter theft, and he was ended up murdered for it. So you can tell me whatever you want as it relates to statistics. My reality is, just because you're giving me LA City statistics, my parameters of safety don't have such boundaries. I'm not going to say, hey, I'm standing in LA right now, I'm 10% safer as opposed to standing in Inglewood, which is one street over. And that's a part of the bigger conversation about crime and safety. It doesn't matter to me what the stats say inside of the city of LA. It matters to me, and I assume everyone else, how we feel in a general sense. And I know feelings are not facts, but it's how we have to position ourselves when we think about safety. In other words, if I'm going to walk my dogs around the block. Everything has to do with how I feel about my safety. I'm not looking at the LA Times website and say, let's see how many dog walkers have been shot this year. Okay. I'm not looking to see how safe is it on the Citizen app to see how much crime there was 2 days ago or in 2 blocks away. It is completely about my assessment of the immediate surroundings. Going back to the street light in Copperwire, I see 3 street lights out. I'm less likely to go walking. Why? Because that probably makes me more of a target. And the crime stats have nothing to do with that.
LAPD has launched focus initiatives like the one in MacArthur Park, which has started to interrupt a cycle of crime and just 2 weeks ago recovered $350,000 worth of stolen goods. Another major change to Los Angeles Police Department is welcoming back Jim McDonnell as our chief. He has improved morale. He is committed to growing the department and enhancing relationships with communities across the city. So I also want to acknowledge the community leaders that are here today because this happens together. So we know that in order to actually make LA safer, we need a comprehensive approach, suppressing crime when it happens and working hard to prevent crime from taking place to begin with.
I don't disagree with any of that. And I'll talk more about that with my remarks at the end of the show. I wish, personally, that it was less of a speech and presentation, and she just talked to us as people who are concerned with our everyday safety right where we are. Not the number of murders, not the number of thefts. And I know politically this is about changing the conversation, moving it away from the fires, moving it away from the recall. I get the politics of it. I'm just talking about the personal connection that I wish our political leaders had with people like you and me. When I go to the store, what is on my mind? What am I concerned with? When I'm going to get gas, we talked about that. When I get on the metro, it's not how many people were murdered. It has to do with understanding that I'm concerned about my well-being, my wife's well-being. I'm concerned about anyone who is in my sphere of concern. And if I could get that from our political leaders, I would be more inclined to buy in. It's not about the statistics of all this.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
It's about the specifics.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Later with Mo Kelly on KFI AM 640.
Live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. And last segment, I was playing audio from the press conference earlier today given by LA Mayor Karen Bass. And I wanted to provide just a little bit of perspective, because I know some people are going to dismiss the stats regarding crime going down out of hand. And I think that misses the point. And I think the mayor, although her interests might have been sincere and her intentions might have been sincere, I think she missed the mark as far as communicating and relating to Angelenos when it comes to crime. Crime and safety are very personal, very personal. If you've ever been robbed, if you've ever been victimized, it is a very personal experience and violation. And Mayor Bass can sit at the podium and rattle off every statistic, every program, every change that she's made, and it's not going to make people feel safer because you're not actually addressing the intimacy of how crime and fear of crime unravels people and unravels families. If she were to do that, I humbly submit that the perception of her and the perception of what she's trying to do would be received differently. Because if you have ever walked out of your house, let's say, and saw that your car had been stolen, if you've ever come home and noticed that someone has broken into your house, if you have ever been robbed, I promise you, you remember that to this day. And those feelings, that feeling of being violated, never leaves you. And it doesn't matter what you may say about this statistic or that statistic. We've hired this person. We're hiring more officers. That has nothing to do with whether people feel safe. And if we could ever get to that conversation, then we will really address whether people feel safe in LA, because ultimately it comes down to whether people feel safe. And I know feelings are anecdotal, but so is safety. And nobody can tell me I should feel safe. I have to actually feel it. I have to know that when I walk out in my neighborhood, there is not only visual evidence, but there's historical evidence that I am at least relatively safe. And 2 days ago, I didn't know the stats. Today, I know the stats. Absolutely nothing has changed in my house. I would tell my wife, do not walk the dogs around the block at night. Do not do that. Sometimes not even in broad daylight, because there are homeless people and you would be in a vulnerable position if I'm not there. Even if I were there, I can't in good conscience recommend you to do that. Why? Because I don't feel it's safe. And that means more than Mayor Bass saying this.
LAPD has launched focus initiatives like the one in MacArthur Park, which has started to interrupt a cycle of crime, and just 2 weeks ago recovered $350,000 worth of stolen goods. Another major change to Los Angeles Police Department is welcoming back Jim McDonnell as our chief. He has improved morale.
Very clinical. Very clinical. Just talk to me. Talk to you. Talk to people who've actually dealt with crime, dealt with the fear connected to crime. Then we can start having a more honest conversation. But if you're just going to give me stats and pat yourself on the back of how we had 455 murders last year and only 423 this year, or whatever the numbers are. I can't even remember the numbers.
So is it more important to address the collective trauma that people experience from crime than it is to just hear these statistics?
100%. Because it's almost like you are on the outside looking in, not actually in this with us. You're the mayor. In theory, you're walking the same streets. You are going to the same grocery stores. You should have the same level of concerns as I do. And if you don't, then clearly you cannot actually deal with the problem, because you can't adequately, I don't want to use a medical term here, but diagnose or identify what the problem is, because we're just living in separate worlds, and we shouldn't be living in separate worlds if you're the mayor of where we live.
There's something to this, because a lot of times just in what I do, one of the most important things you can do for someone who's been traumatized is to join them. And it feels like we're being talked down to instead of having somebody actually join us in the trauma and speak to us as if they are a part of this neighborhood experiencing it too.
She's talking about it from the outside.
Exactly.
And stats be damned. That's nice. But that always has to do with the past. You know, the people who were murdered last year ain't coming back. The people who were murdered this year ain't coming back. So what that there were fewer people murdered? So what that there were fewer violent acts? So what there was less property crime? Talk to me like you know what I have to deal with. Talk to me that you know what it's like to have to make certain decisions about where you're going to go, where you shouldn't go, and why that is. Talk to me, you know what it's like to walk outside your house and say, oh, I'm not going to walk the dogs right now because we got 3 streetlights out, as opposed to just telling us you might have some streetlights out because of copper theft. Damn it, I know that. But do you understand what I am thinking about when I step outside of my house in the city of Los Angeles? It's Later with Mo Kelly. KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
Full bandwidth stimulation.
KFI.
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
Your stomach is a mess and you feel lousy. Something is just off, but you don't know what. Yeah, we get it. You've tried every fad diet and supplement under the sun, and none of it worked. Here's the truth. Your gut's a mess, and your body is letting you know. You're just too busy, and you ignore the signs, making it worse. Viome gets straight to the point, analyzing your gut microbiome to give you a personalized health plan that actually works. Your gut is how your body processes everything that you consume. Stop ignoring the signs. It's time to do something real. Get Viome and fix your gut now. Dial **gut to get $110 off any test. That's *488 to receive a link to the offer.